Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil, and this is my co-host Corey, and tonight we are doing the Falcon Lake Incident, and it was a pretty cool story.
I love how they call the incident thing, right? Like this is
what else do you call it? I don't know.
Falcon Lake Incident.
The Dyatlov Pass Incident. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So there's
apparently a theme.
It's a theme. I think it's just in the whole genre, but excellent story. It was, and it's Canadian. So Falcon Lake is in Manitoba. Our story takes place just outside of White Shell Provincial Park, which is about, if you know where Winnipeg is, which I've never been.
Don't, unless you're from Winnipeg.
And if you're from Winnipeg, please forgive us.
We're so sorry.
We're so sorry. It's fucking cold there. We think it's cold here. Much colder. No mountains to protect you. No terrain. Very flat.
The land of blackened ears and noses.
Oh, yeah, it's not nice. So yeah, do you want me to kind of do a little synopsis?
Go ahead. You're the UFO guy. I'm more of the not UFO guy.
You know what? In this whole case, at no time did he ever say that this was from outer space.
No, and that's important to note.
This is important to note.
But a UFO, folks, UFO does not mean spaceship.
That's
UFO
right.
means, and I think they use this, I think the military, when they use the term UFO, and I don't think they use it so much anymore. There might be a more modern term they use, but at the time they literally meant it's an object that's flying that we can't identify it. We don't know what it is.
That is a great explanation. Thank you for that. It is totally something. Anyway, so yeah, so our story begins with Stefan, you can call him either, I guess, Michalak. And this is back.
Did you have to practice to say that last name?
Michalak, it's a tough name. It's very Polish. So he was from Poland. Our story takes place in 1967. And so Michalak he was from Poland. He took his family. He was an ex-military policeman in his own country. They immigrated to Canada. And how the story kind of begins is that he was prospecting. He was like an amateur prospector. And he basically would go when he had extra time, and he spent a lot of his time, prospecting for things like quartz and silver. And wherever there's quartz, there typically is, nice things like gold and
apparently
silver.
In this case, he had said, I read something about that he was, there with his family, but went off prospecting. So he had went.
He actually took a bus, from my understanding. I don't know if his family was there because he ended up being alone. All the accounts that I've seen is he was alone. He would do this quite often, right? And he actually had a few claims. He had a few stakes in the area that he was working.
Yeah, he would go off and set up claims again whenever he felt like he had something that's possible. You can get mineral rights. It's apparently pretty trivial to get mineral rights. You can get mineral rights to somebody else's property. Did you know?
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. It's a big problem where you own your land, and they're like, well, this company bought the mineral rights under your land, so now they're gonna do a strip mine and cave in your house.
Yeah, that sucks. Well, he wasn't. Basically, he wasn't that guy. But I mean, we're talking now back in 1967. So, he's no stoop. He's quite an intelligent man. He's described as being a very bright individual by all accounts, right up to the day that he died. And I think he died in 99. Like he was quite old. And he was also a mechanic. So he worked.
Age 83, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, he fucking lived a long time. He did a good job for a guy who fucking
all the alien encounter.
Yeah, so he was a mechanic, amateur geologist. So basically that morning he's in the bush and he's searching his whatever he does, looking for fault line, like not faults, but like,
looking for veins. He was
he's doing what
of quartz
prospectors do. It's like Minecraft mining. I know that because the kids.
Anyway. The monkey goggles he brings with him.
So I have a set of those. Those aren't
welding goggles.
Yeah. But this is the other thing. Yeah. So he's not exactly prepared as a a professional in this field, right? So welding goggles are meant for debris and to stop stone chips and what have you. They work actually quite well.
But they're definitely limiting your perception
or your
and
side perception. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I have almost, they haven't changed in like 100 fucking years. They're the same shitty flip up welding goggles that he was wearing. So basically he stops to have lunch and he's like, this is what I find the funniest. Well, sort of. He hears this crazy commotion and a bunch of fucking cobra chickens come rushing out of the bush. It's a gaggle of geese.
A gaggle of nearby geese. Yes.
Yeah. So
honking.
He's like,
crazy.
what the fuck? And you know what, folks? There's not much out there that's not as mean as a fucking goose. I don't care who you talk to.
We have a massive problem in Ottawa. They walk around like they own the fucking joint.
I think you should feed them to the homeless. I'm just saying.
Well, good luck. I think we should feed the homeless to them because I tell you,
I think the homeless has been
fights.
Dude, I got we used to, on the farm, we had fucking goose. And the two of them, and they used to fucking chase me around. I'd be like, God damn it. And the old man would just like kind of walk up to them and give them a boot. They'd leave us alone. They're vicious. Cobra chickens.
Is that what they're called? Cobra chicken because of the neck? Did not know that name. There we go.
Honk, honk, Cobra chicken.
Name. Cobra chicken.
Yeah, they're deadly. Anyway, and Canadian. It's only the Canadian ones that are violent. So he hears this and it startles him. And he looks up. He's kind of looking around like, you know, what startled these birds? That they're fearless, of course. And he sees up in the sky that he sees two objects. And he at first describes them as cigar shaped, which is, or tic tac. That was his first impression, I guess, from distance. You know, he's kind of like, oh, what the fuck is this? And one of the vessels or objects kind of moves off and leaves. And then what you have is the other one, which kind of it lands. And it lands.
It stands on a rock.
Not fucking far from him. Like, and he's like, And his instant thought, and I thought this was the cool part. Like his thought wasn't that this is aliens. His thought, and now you got to remember, this is 1967. And his first thought was, he was in the military. He goes, I thought it was an experimental aircraft.
I thought it was a U.S. military experiment.
Well, and that's what he said. He goes, well, who else would have that kind of technology? And he was also an avid, like, airplane enthusiast.
Oh, like I didn't read that. That's good to know.
Yeah, no, he
was a mechanic. He was a mechanic, right? Like, let's consider he was a policeman, military policeman in the military, but his trade is actually as a mechanic.
Yeah, and not only that, like he's quite smart. So he's looking, you know, at this objectively, saying, because there were experiments back in the late middle 50s and stuff with saucers. You can watch them online. They fucking failed miserably.
Well, and that's important.
They tried.
Talk about that. The cigar shape, they said when it lands, it actually took on more of a saucer shape. So I don't think he means when it landed, he said later into a saucer.
He said from his vantage point, he's like, because, you know, you're seeing it from the side. And he said it had like a raised middle and kind of a raised bottom. And he drew pictures of it. And we'll post those and show you the pictures. So what he did was he didn't want to get close to it. And I don't blame him, you know, and he sat with his notebook and he was kind of sketching what it looked like. And I guess the door of this craft opens up. Nothing comes out, but he can see bright lights, and he decides that, well, maybe they're in trouble. Maybe there's something going on, and maybe he can be of assistance in some way.
He heard muffled voices from inside. So this isn't the case of him randomly screaming out. He honestly thought he was engaged.
Yeah, he heard something. So
couldn't make out quite what they said, but he said muffled voices.
Yeah, and I mean he decides to approach it, even though like it's making this whirring sound and motors are hissing and
stinks of sulfur.
Stinks terribly of sulfur. So, you know, if you're hearing motors and you're hearing engine noises, I personally would think that if this is an alien technology, we're no longer relying on gears and motors, electric motors to do anything.
How the hell did they get here if they're flying on a flywheel, right? Like,
we can't get an oil change on Jupiter. Fuck.
This isn't like, what, you got a 5-speed manual transmission in this thing?
Yeah, where's the pit stop? We got a long trip. Jeremy and Jerry. I don't know, man. We ran out of fucking gas like 2 light years away. Anyway, so the sulfur smell is especially bad. And he remembers that quite vividly. So there's bright lights. He can't really see. There's like smoke. He is approaching the ship, and he's like looking around. He then calls to them and he yells like, Yankee boys. Hey, Yankee boys. And he yells this in his native Polish, then in Russian, and then in German.
Yeah.
And,
so
well, and obviously
English, Polish, Russian, and German. So he went
this guy
all
spoke
the
4
entities.
fucking languages.
I'm thinking if I were Americans and I heard somebody screaming in Russian at me.
Well, he wasn't sure. He kind of covered all the big ones, right?
Yeah.
That he could speak, like,
True.
And in Europe,
it's one of those things with exactly Europe.
In Europe, a lot of people speak German in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very common language, right? So,
and if you're Polish, there's a good chance you speak Russian. There's a good chance.
There's a good chance. It's probably beneficial for you. But yeah, he basically and he gets no answer. So he noted that the ship was really smooth. So there were no rivets, like if you see on a plane, you have riveting, you have metal intersecting, all these things that you would normally see. None of that. He said it was just
it was like
smooth.
one clear seam, like just
like it was
metal
cut out of one piece of metal, like CNC'd out of a single piece of metal. So then he had, because it was so bright, he put his welding goggles on to look inside the ship. You couldn't see shit.
You gotta see these goggles, folks. These are not.
No,
these are not. You're not cool. This is not.
Now, if I'm an alien and I see that fucker looking in my ship, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, goddamn!"
I would flash.
Let me get the ray gun. We don't know what this is. Anyway, so he sees the light and there's various colors. 3 panels. So I guess whatever it was, the thing, 3 panels kind of slide together and the door closes. And he's like, what the fuck? And I think this is where he touches the craft with his gloves. So he's wearing like a heavy duty construction glove, and it melts the glove onto his hand. Or not onto his hand, but it's hot enough.
Melts the glove.
And I'll tell you right now, like you can grab some pretty hot shit with those gloves. I use them at my shop when I'm doing anything with metal and heat. And
if he's walking around with welding goggles on, these are not dollar store.
No, they look like a heavy leather work glove, right? And then before, when he's swinging a hammer, he doesn't want to rip his hands open after using that all day. But so then what happens? The craft begins to turn counterclockwise, and as it does this, he was struck in the chest by what he believed was gas that was being exited out of a panel.
Yeah, he said when it turned, he noticed a grid.
Yeah, like grate type idea, and that's where the gas, blast of air or gas that pushed him back and set his shirt and cap on fire. So he decided to take those things off, instead of fucking burning to death. So and these are all things that he kept, like it's all documented. So one of the things that I'd like to say is that this is one of the most documented cases, probably bar none, in terms of like actual government involvement for the Air Force.
Letter agencies were involved in this. I mean,
countless, man. There was RCMP, local law enforcement, some of the the more deep government. So they were like hounded for years by all sorts of agencies after this, and that's how compelling his story is, and that's kind of where we, this is where that is the story as far as he's concerned. And
that's the story about that's the story about
there's no abduction, and he's
exactly no abduction, no probing. Important to note, folks, this is not
that we're aware of. He had no
aware of. This isn't
prolapsed anus or anything.
That's right. This isn't the Betty and Barney Hill abduction where they took them up into their craft and
fondled his balls. Nothing like that. No ball fondling. Mm-hmm. I think and that he was a very pragmatic man, and that's how he was described. So that's just the kind of the story. And then from there, he decides to do the only thing he can do. He's fucking burnt, and he's badly burnt. These are 1st and 2nd degree burns.
Yeah,
that are on him.
that's not even what motivates him to seek attention, right? It's the other stuff where it's like he's got some burns.
Yeah.
But
Well, no, but he starts to feel sick, super sick. And some of the symptoms.
What is it? Nausea, disorientation. He's vomiting, right? And he's burned, right?
And he's scared. He's fucking scared, and he should be.
Yeah.
You know, he just, you know, he saw like he started to puke his guts out. So he makes his way back to the motel in Falcon Lake. Takes him some time, and then he catches a bus to Winnipeg.
So I heard something different. So what I had read was that he actually had flagged down a cruiser, and I've got a police report where he flagged down a cruiser. So he stumbles out of the woods, flags down a cruiser. They bring him to the detachment. From the detachment, he goes to get medical attention because they have no doctor, and then he takes a bus to Winnipeg.
So he does, So he ends up in Winnipeg. My thing was that he stumbles. You're right. I think you are right, because he stumbles out of the bush somewhere, and there may have been an officer there. But yeah, I know that he was trying to make his way back to his hotel.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure of the. So long story short, he makes it to Winnipeg, and at Winnipeg, they're like, "What the fuck? What happened?" And because his wounds they're raised sores, like it's very odd, and it's in this very particular pattern. And I'll post a picture of that too, that you can kind of see this grate. It's like embedded on his stomach and chest.
Yeah, they were originally just what appeared to be first-degree burns.
Yeah,
in a grid pattern on his chest, like from the grate, like
clearly
like somebody took a waffle iron and put it into his chest.
Yes.
Then they raise up to become welts. So
it was very odd, and like doctors are like, okay, that's not
normally what happens.
No. For weeks later, he suffered from diarrhea, headaches, blackouts, and weight loss. So the one thing that, you know, so some of the skeptics, and they say, well, you know, there's no proof of that. You know, I don't know. What can you say? Yeah.
Fun fact, Bill, do you want to know what the possible symptoms of radiation sickness are?
So yeah, go ahead. I'm pretty sure they're
vomiting, diarrhea, headache, fever, dizziness and disorientation, weakness and fatigue, hair loss, bloody vomit and stools. I don't know if that's infections, low blood pressure.
Low blood, yeah.
And
so
all the other stuff that comes from that, right? So if you're vomiting all the time, you're going to be dropping weight like nobody's business.
He said he lost 20 pounds in one of the interviews, because I listened. So you can listen to his actual interview. It's pretty fucking awesome, actually. He and if you watch and listen to the man, he's legit. Like he's just telling a story, and he's like, he doesn't believe it's aliens. Like, this is old school, right? Like, he's like, fucking aliens don't exist.
He never says, I saw little green man. He didn't see anybody. He heard muffled voices. He doesn't say it was in a language I couldn't understand. He said it was muffled voices. I couldn't make it out.
He said it's some of it could have been. It sounded a little bit like children too, like they were higher pitched voices. That was one of the things he did claim. And his story from 1967 to the day he died never changed. Not one fucking iota. It was the same fucking story, other than he didn't want to tell it anymore. And what he tried to do was actually discourage people from, if they have an experience like this, from doing anything. Because, and that's what we, you know, kind of get into the next part of this, is this turns his fucking whole life upside down. And they're not in a good way, right? And he thought he was doing his duty by actually telling people, you know, informing
they called that
them
out a couple times, saying because of his background as a military policeman, he's like, listen.
Yeah, and where he comes from.
Report it. I should.
And he was in the military. He was a very honorable man. He thought, you know, this is my duty as a citizen, is to you know, which, yeah, in a regular, you know, maybe in Poland they would have taken it a little better, but you know, North America, we're kind of.
They didn't take it poorly. So documentation suggests.
No, they investigated for years.
They did.
So
they did.
We'll get into that. So the story was out. RCMP, Air Force, media, various government agencies, and hordes of gawking members of the public descend on the Michalak's small River Heights bungalow in Winnipeg. It is a shitstorm of media, and it's crazy because, one, he was injured. right? So this was one of the first cases where there's actual physical proof that someone has been injured in one of these UFO kind of scenarios, right? So
He was clearly drunk, Phil. That's what.
well,
That's what they were saying.
so the police. So it was a police officer because the police officer testifies there's no smell of alcohol on this guy. So and I don't remember that guy's fucking name. He's a skeptic who said, "Oh yeah, he was just a drunk." Not a single person in this town said one shitty word about this man. That's man.
What I'm going to go prospecting. First off, I'm going to wander into the woods with my welding goggles and my little hammer.
Prospect. Give myself first degree burns.
Yeah, that's right.
This is the most elaborate plan on the planet to stake claim to something I could just stake claim to.
That's right. I could have done that in my backyard, my bathtub.
And I'm all about people, coming in and saying, okay, being skeptical. Sure. I agree. But he has no gain, and he never, other than his son writing. I mean, his son tried to gain,
but that was later.
Fortune.
But that was later
because that was much later.
Much later. At the start, it wasn't. It was not about gain. So this is the parallel. Remember the Betty and Barney Hill abduction?
Yeah. Same idea. Like, why did we tell anybody?
What did they have to gain?
Like nothing.
Yeah.
In fact, they lost a lot because they were ridiculed. Right. So now he's Stefan Michalak. That's that crazy fucker that was up in the woods and burnt himself on a barbecue grill, is what they said. That was the big thing. And then the doctors clearly said, this is not a barbecue grill. This is from a gas. So it was a thermal burn. So they ruled out that it was like a metal touching.
And all the other symptoms, right?
Oh, and not only that, it returned.
Yeah.
It went away, like it healed, and then it came back. Very odd.
And he experienced the symptoms he was having for what, 6 months, I think? Is that
it was a long time. Yeah.
Wow.
And people were like camping out on his fucking lawn. Like these reporters are relentless, and to get the story. And it was a big story. And this is
Manitoba. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean,
well, it's a big story for Manitoba. It's a big, people came from all over the place.
Did you see all the other ones
so there's a ton, like, what was the one? Shag Harbor. There's a few other pretty,
one of the more recent one. Well, not recent, but ones close to this one was the Rivers incident.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This one, is going to require some digging. Where is it? National Archives, August 28th, 1967.
Yeah. So
they basically said they saw. Now it wasn't anywhere near as elaborate as this, but there were more witnesses. There were like six.
Yeah.
We had 6 observers scattered across 4 different locations.
Yeah.
Right? And the same team that investigated the Falcon Lake incident was involved in this. The military put together a team to do this.
Yeah. So
with like Geiger counters and magnometers, I guess.
So I guess we should kind of get into that. So he heals, and then he's to take them back to the location. So by the time that he healed, so this was in the spring. So the trees hadn't budded yet, right? There was nothing. So it took him 2 tries to get to that exact spot. Now,
and that hurt his credibility.
Yeah, but hear this
to get there.
Yeah, but the first time, and this is in some of the official reports. So what's cool about this story is you can actually go way the fuck into like the breakdown of the military reports. They're online. I found them.
Folks, if you're interested, hit the notes up when this gets.
Get them on the website.
Go to files. I have all them listed. They're all links. You can pull up individual scans of the original reports.
Yeah, like it's one of those ones where you're like, oh. So what they did was they took him and put him in a fucking helicopter, took him, from the air, which that's not how he knew how to get to his locations, and basically find a landing area and go, okay, well, where is it? He's like, fuck, I don't even know where I am right now. He had a difficult time. And then the second time was a similar idea from a different location. And he's like, can we just go the way I know? He goes in, and not only that, the tree is covered in, for a fact, we've spent enough time in the forests. And
oh God, yeah.
When things are, it's nice when there's no leaves. fuck, you can see for a long ways.
And it looks different.
It looks very
completely
different.
different. And
Yeah,
once everything starts to fill in,
yeah,
unless
you've
you
got
have a
ferns
big
and growth
Exactly.
and low bushes and
Yep.
everything fucking turned. But he ends up finding it, and it's exactly as he says. So,
well, what did he find? What did they find there?
so they found about a 20-meter or 20-foot diameter circle that was on this rock, and it basically blasted all of the lichen and everything. Everything was dead within this circle, which was very odd. So this now becomes a very different investigation. There was also radiation found,
Yes.
right? So the radiation in that area specifically was when people are like, "What the fuck?"
But
And-
radiation. So they've got a reason for that, right? So
Well,
they said that radium 2,
yeah,
Yeah.
so they did, but that doesn't make any sense because
radium
was-
226, a natural
because it was localized. So if it was a vein, and this is the other things, like, you know, why there was radiation, it was in some of the crevices of the ground, right? But they never found a radium vein. I don't think.
Yeah, they just say the radioactive material found in the rock fault was radium 226, a naturally occurring isotope in wide commercial use, and also found in nuclear reactor waste. So they found
Yeah.
radium 226 in the rock fault. Now,
Yeah,
they
well,
don't
there
go
was
into
in
detail
some.
as to whether it's a vein or whether, like you said,
Yeah, I
it's-
don't. Well, yeah, they don't. Well,
They said they found it in the rock fault.
so even though that this is well documented, it's also there are things that are missing. Be it bureaucracy, be it whatever. There are archives that are missing. based on-
of ourselves with some of the
We are. Let's not. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's go back. I don't want to spoil all of that goodness, but so he's there. He's looking over the area. There's definitely something that happened there. And yeah, so they start their investigations. And my guess is they went through that with a fine-tooth comb. All of these different branches.
They threw a lot of resources. A surprise. If you look at the
Air
report,
Force,
they threw a
RCMP.
surprising number of resources at this, given the fact that nobody was killed. Now, mind you, this would have been height of Cold War, right?
It would be. This was a well. This was
anytime
yeah.
you're
This
dealing with
is
stuff like
definitely
that. Now we're dealing with. Wait a second. I don't
Yeah.
think they're thinking, "Oh my God, we've got aliens." They're thinking, "Oh my God, maybe."
Is this a Russian plane? Is
Right,
this a Russian
haven't.
fucking stealth fighter?
Yeah.
That would be my. I mean, if I'm a military person, I'd be like, okay, there's definitely something happening here, and what we want to know what it is. But he was
The U.S. wasn't talking. The U.S. didn't say, "Oh, that was one of ours. Our bad."
no. Well, in fact, the U.S. came to investigate.
Mhm.
They
Yep.
sent their own crew.
I wonder, were they Blue Book? Were they Blue Book folks, or was Blue Book around?
I don't know if
Blue
Blue
Book
Book
was
was
at the time.
around at that time, but they basically sent officials, and they concluded that it's
Maybe
unexplained.
Bob Lazar was there.
Oh, Bob, poor Bob. Leave Bob alone. He never did anything to you.
He didn't. I was just curious. I mean,
He's a fucking genius among men. If you're listening, Bob, we love you here. Do you want to be on the show?
hey,
We'll make it happen.
totally- and that's right. Drop us all
I like
in
you, Bob.
comments.
I think you're telling the truth. This
I-
ass. Oh
I
wait,
don't think you're
This-
lying, for the record.
that asshole.
I don't think you're lying, for the record.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
That's
a start.
That's a start.
That's progress. That's progress. So yeah, so this is a big deal, and it goes on for like at least a year. Here's where I get a little. So they're doing all their processing. They're figuring shit out. They're doing everything, and Michalak decides a year later to come back to the site on his
a
own.
buddy of his, I think. He
Yeah, it was somebody. He didn't want to go alone, and they decide to start. Now I love the story, and this is the only part of the story that I go, something's not right. And I'm not saying that he would have been the one to do it, but they find something in these faults, these little fissures that he digs out, and they find some very strange material. It's basically almost like pure silver.
Yeah, so they find a molten material and it's basically
Well, it was bent. It was bent like a W, and
But
Yeah.
that's, they thought is molten, meaning it had melted.
Yeah,
Right?
but
Right.
yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily broke off, but whatever it was had melted
Yeah.
and then formed in to the fissure
Yeah.
or the crack.
And it was radioactive.
And radioactive silver apparently is not unheard of,
No.
but it is incredibly unusual.
And actually the purity of silver that they found too was like many times that of like, commercial silver. So you're not going to melt grandma spoons down. The
And
fucking,
you're not going to find it necessarily naturally occurring like this.
no, it's
because
a processed material. Like it's
Yep.
so they find these, they actually find several pieces, and they find like slag of this stuff too, like smaller pieces, and they collect it. My only thing about this is that if I was doing a military investigation and I'm not by any means military trained to do any of this, but I would be like, this fucking thing is gridded out. Every square 100 meters of this fucking thing is going to be torn apart and dissected. I mean, that and including any open cavities, especially open cavities on the ground.
Oh yeah, exactly. So, but Steve and his buddy found this. Like that's where it gets a little weird. And one of the theories is that somebody else, either not he did it, but somebody else too.
Yeah, he was too legit to quit. He was too legit. But that's right. People are like,
hammer pants, Phil.
I've got them. Actually, I'm not wearing pants. Just for the record. I do these podcasts totally bottomless. Yeah.
Commando. That's what we call him.
Commando.
He's in the movie Commando.
Yeah. I'll scumber your daughter. Beetlejuice.
Oh, Michael.
Anyway, Michael, it was a great fucking movie. Anyway,
yeah, the theory is
so
somebody had planted this to make it story.
Now, who would
but then
plant that much
wander back and check
silver?
it out himself. Yeah,
because even in 1968, at this time, it's still quite a bit of money worth of silver.
Radioactive. How the heck?
And radioactive. Yeah,
you go off. What do you do? I mean, I guess you could.
Yeah,
I suppose.
I mean, we always say radiation, but radiation's everywhere. Radiation's in your phone. It's in your microwave. It's in your fucking sky. I mean, our bodies are pounded with it.
Not sure what the rating you have to be considered radioactive, but I have pretty sure it's more than the stuff.
Yeah. So they thought about shutting this forest down. That's how fucking much radiation they found. That this area, they thought about containment, just based on some of the numbers. And he was radioactive. Like there was trace amounts on his clothes and his mitts. There was trace amounts of radiation. So, that was one of the other things. Now,
a lot of radioactivity.
Now, that could be associated with they were on the ground, because he tore them off, threw them on the ground, and that's how they got radioactive. I don't know. Well, nobody knows, right? And I mean, if you're on fire, you're not fucking thinking about that. You're just like, my gloves are melting, my shirt's on fire. I would take that off.
Folks may have noticed Phil has less of a beard. This is the exact same thing that happened to him. Got too close to exhaust
a razor blade
UFOs and burnt off his mustache.
See, look at that. No beard.
Yeah. Actually, the real reason, folks, is H.H. Holmes. He could not compete with H.H. Holmes' dashing mustache. So
his mustache game was beyond what I could ever do, and I felt insecure as a man. I decided to shave it off. No, once every year, I tend to do a. What do you call that? What? That was pretty.
Donated.
Nobody's gonna want that. It's pretty coarse.
They might want to stuff a mattress with it or something. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty thick. I've quite curly, thick beard hair. Anyway,
it's not gray yet, buddy. Be thankful.
There is some. It's not super gray. Are you gray? Are you gray? Are you a silverback?
Like dead dog. Well, I look like my dead dog when I grow my beard in. She had gray going through her muzzle. That's me, basically.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, I've been pretty lucky. Other than I lost it up here.
Just gotta move it from one area to another, Phil. That's what you have to do.
Yeah. No, I figure once it's gone, I don't want it back.
You're growing more face. You're not losing hair. You're growing more face.
Fuck it. It's a beautiful face. Look at this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Vote in the comments, folks. Phil's face, beautiful. Yes, no.
Hey, I'm bringing Big Sexy back. Oh, that's right. Anyway, so it's intensely investigated. A lot of radioactivity. Chris Rakowski is a well-known ufologist, or I don't know if that's the way you.
I think it's pronounced
Anyway.
urologist, Phil.
No, urologist is a dick doc. You know what? No, Chris is not a urologist.
Yeah, Chris is a Canadian science writer, educator, and consultant for the Winnipeg paranormal groups. Since the 1970s, he's written about his investigations and research on UFOs.
Yeah, he's very well respected within his community and actually in a lot of other communities, because he looks at things very objectively, which is how we are. We enjoy that, does that make sense, kind of aspect of things. And he looked at this, and there was no doubt in his mind that Michalak had seen something. And I agree. Not only that, but was it an alien, or was it in fact, we know by what's happened in Area 51 with the experimental aircraft. Could it be an experimental aircraft? It fucking could be.
Completely. And again, back to the UFO does not mean alien. UFO means
that's
don't
right.
know what it is, and
that's
it's
right.
flying around.
And until the day he died, he was like, could it have been otherworldly? Perhaps. But
Michalak,
he goes, I don't think
by the
so.
way, folks.
No, Michalak. This is Michalak, yeah. And until the day he died, he basically was like, no. He believed that it was something, man-made.
And he never really capitalized on this incident.
He never made a fucking penny off of this. No.
He did not.
No, his son made money. Well, so it was kind of interesting because I listened to a podcast, and I'll post it. I can't remember the name of the fucking podcast for the life of me, but it interviews Chris Rakowski. And Chris grew up. So you want to hear a funny story? Chris grew up down the street from this family, literally as a kid. He would, yeah. And he remembers recounting he was friends with the son. I think it's Stan is the son.
Yeah, there's Stan. He's got, what is it? Stan. I want to say it. Dan.
I think, Stan's the one who wrote the book. But so what happened was the father, like Stefan Michalak, said, I don't want fucking any more interview. I don't want to deal with you people. He was fed up. And he was fed up with the criticism. He was fed up with the fact that he came forward, and, people thought he was a fraud. And he was like, I'm not doing any more interviews. And then, so he does one more interview, and that's with this Chris Rakowski. And the only reason they did it was that Chris said, like, let's tell your story the way you want to tell it, and I'm not going to really interfere. This is your story, and you can say what you want, and I'm not going to twist your words. And that's what they did. And I think it was done in like 85.
Okay.
He was also on Unsolved Mysteries.
Yep.
Remember Robert Stack? Guy was a fucking stud.
Good to know.
He was Elliot Ness, Untouchables. That's who we played.
Yeah, I think of Kevin Costner as Elliot Ness.
That's our
Sean
generation.
Connery.
He was
Sean
like
Connery.
He would have been your dad's generation of Elliot Ness, right? Like that's when he played the Untouchables. So yeah, so they do an interview, and basically, they kind of recount all this stuff. And like I said, his story has never really changed. So he also goes to the Mayo Clinic because he's not getting better.
That's right. So we're jumping back to about
a little bit, yeah.
With I think a couple months after the incident.
It's more than that.
Better.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, so he was feeling better, but he would have these bouts of where these burns were actually coming back. No doctors in Winnipeg could understand why. This is all documented.
So healthcare for you folks,
right? So, well, not. I wouldn't go that far because he didn't get many more answers in Rochester, New York, either.
He got zero answers in Rochester. He got zero answers at the Mayo Clinic. Other than that, they said he wasn't crazy.
Well, they basically said that, yeah, and he had to pay for it out of his own pocket. Canadian, healthcare system did not cover it at the time, but he wanted to know. He's like, "Fuck, I'm getting sick all the time. Still, I'm vomiting. I'm getting bouts of fatigue and things he wasn't used to." And apparently, it ailed him for most of his life. He, in one way or another, he had ailments.
Well, one of the interesting parts is when he was first at the hospital in bed, and his son went and saw him.
He stunk.
He talks about he looked very pale, haggard, and just a huge stink in the room, like a horrible aroma of sulfur and burnt motor.
Burnt motor, yeah. Have you ever smelled a human being that smelled like a burnt fucking motor?
No.
Unless they were burnt.
Smelled a burnt motor. It's a very distinct smell.
I know. It's one of those things. It's electrical. It's very stinky.
So,
but that's a weird
after it. Like, it's just really odd.
And it lasted for a while. Like he was putrid. Like people didn't want to be around him.
Oh, I didn't realize it lasted. I knew
it lasted for a little bit. I don't know how long. Like probably a few weeks, I would think. But no matter how much he showered, no matter what he did or bathed, that stink was with him. And so yeah.
So now we can jump back to the Mayo Clinic basically.
The Mayo Clinic, yeah.
We have no idea what's going on with you, but we know you're not crazy. So that was one thing that they called out specifically. He is not, you are not crazy. You strike me as a very reasonable individual.
Yeah.
This is not in your head. We have no idea what's going on, but
yeah, he was such a, I don't know. He was just such a legit dude. Like if you talk to him,
down to earth.
Yeah.
Everything you hear about him, nothing screams.
Nobody said a fucking bad word about this guy. Like, and you had enough people looking that if there was something like, oh, he's a drunk, or he's this or he's that, you would have heard something. Somebody somewhere would have went, oh yeah, you want the scoop on this fucking asshole?
Well, exactly. And you had the mix, right? You had the people that were trying to make him into this saint, and you had the other because they wanted to, for whatever agenda, to legitimize what he did.
Yeah.
And you had the other people who were trying to make him into this wackadoo.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So you're right. All they found was their actual psychiatrist says he is very pragmatic, very down to earth, pardon the pun, and does not make up stories. That was from the Mayo Clinic psychiatrist.
He didn't go there for a psychological exam. He went there because he was vomiting and bloody stool, that kind of stuff.
And they couldn't tell you why.
They couldn't tell you why, but they said, we don't think anything's wrong upstairs. Like you're not, this is not in your head.
Yeah. Because this is 68 and it's because the burns are coming back. This is one of the
come back, not necessarily it's burns, but they would be coming back as welts.
Raised welts,
right?
Yeah. Very odd. I mean, everyone's been burned to some degree, maybe not first degree burns, but they don't typically, reoccur. At least you don't want them to. That was never explained. And my assumption is that they eventually went away. I mean, he lived to be 83. I'm sure he didn't. He learned to live
heart
with
and
them.
stroke. So usually you can guess what somebody died of by their obituary, and they're asking, in lieu of flowers, donations in Stefan's memory may be made to the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Manitoba. So that implies he died of a heart attack or a stroke.
You would think, yeah. Where do we go from here?
One comment I want to make about Chris, our buddy Chris. Did you know as of 2007, the Canadian federal government directs all UFO sightings to him and
his partners,
UFO Research of Manitoba?
Yeah. Yeah. He's a very, like I said, he's a very legit guy. He's very thorough. And he's very much on board with all of this stuff.
They recently did a Kickstarter to raise funds to be able to digitally archive not just this stuff for this incident, which I think is why we were able to access it, but all the reports that were generated on all the UFO sightings that they came up.
Oh, really? Yeah, and it's actually his report which was presented to the government, that I accessed most of this information.
Really? I was looking at the original one by the original team. So it was an S.E. Hunt from Mr. S.E. Hunt. He was part of the team. Stuart
Hunt of the Department of Health and Welfare. Yeah, so that's the one who showed the soil contaminations and all of that. This is not done by just Joe Blows. His report included all of that stuff, right? It was a sort of a synopsis of what happened.
Let's compare and contrast this to the Walton experience.
There's no compare. I mean,
not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. With the amount of research you do, they're different ends of the spectrum, right?
That's right. Travis Walton which, check out the podcast. It was interesting. Like and subscribe.
By the way, in the future, we do need to make sure to we shouldn't have put the Hill and Walton together. We could have spent the whole podcast talking about either of those.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. But
that's why I'm glad we don't have this as double header. The double header podcast. Oh God.
I know. And this was interesting. And this is our season 3 first episode opener. Yeah. And it's a good one.
John for recommending it.
Thank you, John. I don't know if he wants me to say his last name, but we'll say John. Thank you, John. Thank you for that. Brilliant man. Very smart fellow. So yeah, he dies with his story, and a book was written. He got some commemorative coins.
Yeah, there's a coin. There's actually a coin.
There's a coin
commemorating. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been taken seriously. Where you have like Roswell, and the government says nothing happened. It was a weather balloon. Well, their first press release was, flying saucers found, and then the second one's like,
well, and it's the evidence, the archival evidence that
right.
I haven't looked at the dump. I think they declassified a bunch of stuff, so I don't. Again, not a big ufologist or urologist.
Neither am I. I just I do find it interesting, and if I run across stuff, I tend to read it. But I think what would have happened though, if this was, so they were very dependent upon Michalak to show them where this site was, right? Where in Roswell, New Mexico, I mean, the farmer's like, there's the farm. This is where it crashed, like the land. It was easily accessible, and it's not like Michalak could just go, he's in the hospital, to show them where everything was. Right.
Sure.
So
I also think we're dealing with the Canadian government at this point didn't really have a horse in this race, except for the fact that potentially Russia is flying around with a experimental craft on their land, on their property, which is Manitoba is really far afield if they're zipping around. Like I would expect more periphery, like coastal versus
or Yukon, or like they do right now. They fly over the Arctic, pushing our borders, our limits.
Yeah, and we dispatch
fighters and all that good stuff, and then they go, oh, sorry. Right. But yeah, no.
And the Roswell, but that's the contrast with Roswell is Roswell comes across as they were trying to hide something. They
were absolutely, yeah, for sure. And I think that there's probably more cases out there that are maybe just not as popular. Like I didn't know about this case, right? And it's well documented.
I was pulling them up when just doing this. And
yeah, I know.
There was something like
there was one in Halifax, like Shag Harbor, and all those other.
1967. Apparently, there were UFOs flying all over the place.
Yeah,
you can pull up a chronological. You can pull up a list of in 1967 how many of these reports. So much so that this team that they put together for this one got involved in other ones. They wound up,
and that's common though. Like if you look at Roswell, there was 100 sightings before the crash in that area. 100. That's a lot, and it was becoming very happenstance. It's just fucking there's another one. Weird, right? So it makes you wonder, was there experimental crafts being used? And my only problem is, why would you light it up like a fucking Christmas tree? That's not a military thing, right? Like you look at the Blackbird, you look at all these stealth fighters, dark.
But remember when we were talking about in the Philadelphia experiment, some of the experiments they were doing with like diffuse lighting experiment, right? So the idea, for example, that you want to increase the luminosity of your ship to match the sky. Well, that's fine unless you're on the ground, in which case your ship is now glowing on the ground, right? Like, so there's,
well, he said he saw them flying too.
Yeah.
Like he saw them flying. It wasn't like they were like cloaked in some sort of, photo, whatever.
They also look cigar shaped until they got closer. Like, oh, those aren't cigars; they're flying saucers.
Those aren't flying cigars. We're not in Cuba anymore.
In Cuba, it's Cuba. They're missiles.
Fucking Cuban missiles. The Cubans are coming.
So,
yeah.
Phil, do you think aliens or experimental craft? Those are really the only two options.
You know, I mean, I love the idea of aliens. And right now, if you are a fan of aliens, this is like, you are just like, you know, getting off on all of this stuff that's going on right now. Like you're just like, oh, the aliens are so awesome because they're
doing an explicit rating again.
What?
Thanks, Phil.
What? It's at the end. No one watches this far.
That's true.
Maybe your mom.
My mom.
Apologize. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I feel dirty now. God damn. So yeah. But yeah, like if you're into UFOs and aliens, do I think it was? I think there's you know, based on the motor sounds, based on the weirdness of the smells, that sounds mechanical to me. That sounds like something that's whirling, sounds like fans. Like in the original saucers that were designed by the Germans and by a bunch of different people, they were like giant hovercraft, right? Like they weren't like anti-gravity. I would expect anti-gravity to make no fucking noise. Why? Because we're anti-gravity. We're doing something to displace gravity to make us, you know.
You don't
float.
expect aliens to be attaching bombs to themselves to launch themselves through space or into orbit, and you don't expect them, given the maneuverability that you always hear about from these the alien ones. Super awesome. They don't sound like they're playing by the normal rules of aeronautical engineering that we know.
Yeah, no. And do I think that all of these kind of things are alien? I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, it's always aliens. Do I believe that, you know, there's a possibility that there are alien life? Absolutely. But it's too infinite. It's too big not to be. But like you take a guy like Neil deGrasse and he goes, why the fuck would anybody want, you know, to visit Earth? You know, why would
Slum?
Well, we're a new species that's on the verge of killing itself every time we turn around. Maybe they're into drama. Who knows?
That's right. It turns out we're a TV show, in which case they would just set something up in orbit to watch us.
Well, yeah. Or they, you know, who knows? Or you get the odd, you know, mechanical failure and like Roswell. But do I think this is? I don't fucking know. I would lean more on, based on his opinion, whirling machinery, sounds. It took off. It expelled gases to take off. That sounds like a fucking engine.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that's, you know, otherworldly. Like if you're coming here from another fucking solar system, you know, and I'm only assuming you are not going to do it with that. You're not going to do it with fan driven, you know, engines.
With the power of steam.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
but
I'm in the same boat as far as aliens versus now. I don't doubt something like just the amount of evidence, and I say evidence, all the research, everything that's gone into this. And again, the guy doesn't sound like a wackadoo.
You know what? Do yourself, if you've watched this far, do yourself a fucking favor and look into it. If you're interested in this sort of stuff, and if you are, you're likely are, if you've listened to us two yahoos talk about this for the last hour.
Unless you're my mom, in which case, love you, Mom. You're doing this.
Yes, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. You're our biggest fan.
That's right.
We love having fans.
It's that button. Like and subscribe. Just click it.
Like and subscribe. Then yeah, it's worth a read. It's something that I kind of was. I'm glad John, you know, brought us onto this, and if he has any more great ideas, let us know, because we always like great ideas. But yeah, do you have anything to
add? Do we want to summarize? Like, do we have much more? I think we're pretty much at the.
Yeah, we're about an hour.
There's not really too much more to go into this. Again,
no,
can't stress enough. If you are interested in this, hit my notes up. Go to
check out the website, orderedchaos.ca.
Hit that up, and you'll see under episodes the notes for this.
It's really cool shit, especially if you're Canadian. I mean, normally you hear about this stuff in America, right, or wherever, but you know, it almost makes you want to kind of look into, more of these Canadian sort of things. So we can wrap it up. And do you want to do a summary? Because you're so good at it.
Oh, yeah. I'm so great at it. Okay. So, summary, folks. Our good friend, Stefan Michalak was out prospecting in May of 1967.
Oh, hold on. May 20th, which is
May
a great,
20th, 1967.
great date, because that's also my birthday. Not 67, but May 20th.
You sure? What?
Are you sure that's your birthday?
I don't know.
What are you, a cop?
I don't know you anymore if you shaved your beard. Anyway, May 20th, 1967, our buddy Steve is out prospecting for quartz and silver in Falcon Lake. Comes across a strange craft, two strange craft in the sky. One lands in front of him, draws it out, goes over to touch it after hearing them talk and calling out to them, saying, Yankee boys, let me help you out in 4 different languages.
Yeah.
Gets his glove melted, gets flared from the vents when the thing takes off, burns his shirt and hat, stumbles disorientated and nauseous out of the woods, gets flagged down by a cruiser, winds up in the hospital, and then chaos ensues from what appears to be, not that it was ever officially diagnosed as radiation poisoning, but apparently radiation poisoning from the symptoms he was experiencing, and his life got turned upside down.
Absolutely.
And
that's a pretty
lot of resources went into this.
Yeah. And there's a lot of documented stuff. That's probably the best thing that and we could get into all of the specifics and then you can get into the, if we wanted to debate whether or not it was legit, and they go into all of that too. There are skeptics who, kind of, but they're very weak in terms of their analysis. So
well,
what are we doing?
Challenge. There's only one witness, Steve.
Well, Stefan.
Stefan is the only one witness. He's the only one that saw anything.
And got burned.
And he got burned. Yeah, literally and figuratively. This was not beneficial to him to report this. No, and that's what he said. He warned others. Don't fucking do it. It'll turn your life upside down. Yeah. You're trying to be a good citizen, and voila, here you are. Now you're a quack. So, what are we doing next week, Corey? Corey, to this day, it hasn't been determined what exactly happened.
This is true. It is a mystery, and that's why it was on Unsolved Mysteries. And speaking of unsolved mysteries, what are we doing next week?
All right. Well, I've been bouncing between 2 possibilities, so we'll keep people in suspense because I want us to sort of hash this out. We've been talking about outer space an awful lot. Like maybe let's not talk about outer space. Let's talk about inner space, and specifically, I'm talking about Edgar Casey, the American psychic. That's the one possibility.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other one is those 2 demonologists, Lorraine and Ben, I think, who were involved in a big whack of haunted houses. The Amityville horror.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
But we're not talking about we wouldn't be talking about the Amityville horror. We'd be talking about, I believe, Lorraine and Ben, the demonologists who were involved in all of these.
Oh, really?
They were the ones who I believe it's Ben and Lorraine.
Okay. Lorraine
so those
and
are the
Ben.
2 possibilities. I haven't really settled. I was looking into both.
Okay. Well, let me know.
Yeah.
Ben, Edgar Casey. I know nothing about him.
Yeah, he was an American psychic, early 1900s. Predicted the road to Atlantis.
Really?
Apparently, he would lapse into trances, and his secretary would record what he would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Interesting stuff. And again, now the Ben and Lorraine one, maybe we save that for another time. Tell you what, let's go with Edgar Casey. That one,
okay.
I think let's go with that.
Look at you. You're on the fence.
Yeah.
Edgar Casey. I will look him up.
We'll save Ben and Lorraine. And again, not 100% sure it's Ben and Lorraine. I know it's Lorraine. I'm not sure it's Ben.
It's pretty important. But Amityville, I mean, that is in itself a huge topic. I mean, people love that shit.
But that's kind of been done to death. So that's why I don't want to sort of touch on it. Yeah. I want to sort of touch on the 2, this couple that were.
Never heard of Edgar Casey. Yeah. So, or Lorraine and Ben.
I believe it's Lorraine and Ben. Again, I might be wrong. I'm sure Phil will flash something up there.
I have no idea, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Anyway, Edgar Casey, next time, American Psychic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening to the OC. I'm your host, Phil, my co-host, Corey, and we're glad you tuned in because, without you. We're just talking to ourselves, and that'd be weird.
We're talking to each other, which it has a value.
Okay, fine, whatever.
But we don't. But our subscriber count would really suck without you folks. So
that's right. We love that, and we love your feedback. So leave us a comment and a like.
Keep the porn links down to a minimum, folks.
So many porn links. I usually delete them. They're a bot of some sort, I think. Mm-hmm. Do not click on those links. Anybody, do not do that. I believe those are viruses. So anyway, thanks for watching, and have a good night. And we're the OC.
Take care, folks.